So here's what we do to affirm our rightness about how wrong the other person is. We will selectively collect data to support our thesis, whatever it is. And then we also selectively ignore all the data to the contrary. We're like a heat-seeking missile looking for evidence to support the conclusion that I've already come to.
When someone postures themselves with a high need to be right so that they don't ever consider being wrong, what happens in group settings is usually other people just begin to withhold their participation.
Yeah, and I'd say being around somebody who has that need to be right is freaking tiring.
And we're inviting people to look deep within themselves and ask the question, how is my way of being drawing people forward or repelling people and keeping them, making participation more difficult?
If you've known me a long time, you're likely to have heard me say at some point, the booby prize in life is to be right about how wrong somebody else is.
Can you translate that for my generation?
Yeah, for your generation.
Is it the booby prize? The language? Is that what throws you
right?
around?
So a booby prize is the prize nobody wants. This is the prize you get for coming out to the golf tournament, but you finish pretty much last, and so it's like that. It's like the last guy picked in the NFL draft, Mr. Irrelevant, that he gets the booby prize.
So let me risk and say it might be, in your generation, John, a participation trophy. I'm just, that may not be it exactly.
I always get one.
Here's your participation. Yeah.
Well, I'm great. I've about gotten a participation trophy for every sport I've ever played.
There you go. Yeah,
really good.
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, kindergarten.
Yeah.
Yes.
We get
lunchroom.
to be right.
I still have them in room on my trophy shelf.
We get to be right about how wrong the other person is.
And think about this.
Gosh.
Every one of us
Love
that
that.
sat with a couple that was in conflict got to witness this actually happening, where they would rather be right about how wrong their mate is than actually to have restoration, to have reconciliation, to have peace, to have love again. And so you watch people opt for the booby prize over and over and over again.
I've done it.
Oh, yeah.
I've done it in my
I'm not
marriage.
surprised.
I've done it. I've watched other people do it all the time. I think they're unaware most of the time that they're doing it. However, some are aware of it and still commit to it.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
I get it. So continue.
Back to the conversation.
Yeah.
So look, so when you're with a couple, think about this. All of us have done this. We've all had conversations with couples in particular that have been in one of these breakdowns. And so here's what we do to be right, to affirm our rightness about how wrong the other person is. We will selectively collect data to support our thesis, whatever it is, i.e. how bad she is or he is, and how wonderful I am, and lily white and all that. And then we also selectively ignore all the data to the contrary. And we do this all the time. I say we're like a heat-seeking missile looking for evidence to support the conclusion that I've already come to. So I'm not actually being a scientist and letting the evidence speak for itself. If any of you have ever been caught in a legal matter, that's what you want. You want the evidence to speak for itself, to actually be viewed clearly and ethically that way. And yet inevitably in our relational tangles, we don't.
Yeah.
And being right is so important to me that it's more important than our relationship, more important than our team's progress, more important than the church accomplishing what God has called her to be about, like that, right? So we want to address this tonight.
Yeah, so my mind's firing on all the ways in which relationships, friendships, committees, groups of people trying to work together, the high cost of my rightness, how it undermines really the objectives, the planning. So think about times in your own life when you've observed people who've just anchored themselves to their position regardless of the cost to the organization. And it happens all the time, and pastors are not immune to that kind of defense. And as you were talking about it, it really is reminiscent of this leadership and self-deception idea that I'm inflating my own
Virtues, right?
looking for evidence to undermine or point out other people's flaws and shortcomings so that I can self-justify. We're just changing that around a little bit, saying this is a really big obstacle for creating empowering environments or building coalitions or coalescing and collaborating around ideas, and just begin to think about how devastating that is. My observation is that when someone postures themselves with a high need to be right so that they don't ever consider being wrong, that what happens in group settings is usually other people just begin to withhold their participation. And they're like, hey, I don't want to even get into this. And I think it breaks down the possibility of good communication.
So interesting to think about. Kirk, as you're talking about the heat-seeking missile, just rings in my ear the word. It reminds me of what's called confirmation bias, right?
Yeah.
Like we're so desperate to confirm what we think.
Right.
If that's right, I'm thinking about how our team would function. If when we're discussing a new project like this project, part of what makes it so beautiful is that it's not any one of the people's here's ideas about what would work. It's actually an amalgamation. And if one of us was convinced that we should be right about it, I don't even think we'd be here. It feels like it's that stark. I don't even think we'd be here.
It's a very unresourceful way of being with other people. That posture of needing to be right really undermines and under-resources people.
Yeah.
And it really kills environments and relationships.
Yeah, and I'd say being around somebody who has that need to be right is freaking tiring. So if you're wondering, I wonder if I'm one of these people with a high need to be right all the time, just look around you. Are people moving toward you or away from you? Are people ponying up to be in your presence, to be on the committees that you serve, to be on a team with you, right? To collaborate. Who wants to collaborate with Kirk? Yeah, everybody's...
No hands go up. No.
So maybe,
yeah.
So I grew up in a household where one of my family members was very studious, very, very thorough in researching things. And so he was often right. But what became aggravating was he was always certain.
I've heard you say that, yeah.
Even when he wasn't. When he wasn't an authority on a subject, he'd be schooling you on how to produce a video series because he figured he must know. And he was so sure about how right he thought he was that there was no room for any give and take, for any back and forth, or any, what do you guys think? It was just like, it's this is the way it is, this is the way it has to be. The moon is absolutely made out of cream cheese. There's no possibility that it's made out of anything else.
Yeah.
The earth is flat.
There you go. Think about what is at the heart. What's the root of that kind of heart posture? Anybody want to take a guess? I mean, let's kick that around. I mean, I have my own idea, but I'm wondering what you guys think the root of that need to be right all the time.
Well, it's a pride.
I think it's pride.
There.
I think there's an arrogance with that comes with that idea that my idea is always better, my thought is always superior, my gifting is always stronger, I'm better, and therefore I'm right.
Yeah, you're righter than the rest of us.
I'm righter. I'm the rightest person in the room.
But I want to offer that could be the flip of that, which is insecurity. Because I'm actually trying to cover from my insecurity the fact that I don't know whether I'm right or not with my bravado.
Yeah.
and my
Yeah.
chirping and churning and
Right.
Yeah.
and peacocking, through my life.
that's
And
a-
because
there's
I'm
a picture.
smart, and if you're smart, it's a crazy thing. I coach a number of people whose IQs are much higher than mine, which is a fascinating challenge. Because in every room they've ever been in, they're the smartest guy in the room or the smartest gal in the room. And I don't have that problem. So what I mean is, for people who are gifted by God intellectually, and there are people who are gifted with brilliance, they will come to the conclusion way before the rest of us do. Their cranium is operating at a, higher torque thing, and they've landed there way before the rest of us do. They've finished the puzzle. They've solved the problem. They've seen the connections that the rest of us have. It takes us a lot longer to do that. And as a consequence, they are often right, but they're not always right. And that's the danger of being often right, is you can assume an infallibility that's going to really, really be harmful for you in the end.
Yeah.
Something about being often right, but assuming that being often right with the need to be right. Is that what I'm hearing you say when those two go hand in hand?
Yeah.
I say often right, always certain.
Right.
And certainty, as we teach, when you and I teach on coaching, certainty is the enemy of curiosity. And to be even an average coach, you've got to be curious. You've got to remain curious.
Man, it feels like it's so unhelpful. Like, being certain, we feel like it's helpful. We're studious. We're learning. We're figuring it out. But what you're saying, I think, is it actually is the counter to what really helps us know and perceive, which is curiosity. It's like it bites in the butt, right? Is that
Right.
Well, when I hear that, I think of Jesus, and I'm thinking about the questions he would ask people. He knew the answers, but he lived with that sense of humility that would say, well, who do you say I am?
Wow.
Because
right.
it draws persons toward you and into dialogue. And we know curiosity promotes discovery. But when I take a position, I've got the rightness of any issue or cause or direction, or, we've said it before, it undermines a healthy conversation. It thwarts a healthy discussion. It silences other people's participation. It's a big put off. And what's crazy is sometimes people know they're doing it. So it becomes a power play. It becomes a scheme or a way of getting a strategy to get their needs met for other reasons. But we're talking about how it undermines relationships. And so we want to flip this at some point and say, so what is a way out when I begin to realize, oh, oops, maybe that formidable foe is something that is a nemesis for my leadership influence, or my leadership influence.
That just makes me think. Earlier today, we were having a meeting, planning something else besides this conversation, and you said something to us, Z. And it's interesting thinking about this. We were talking about this project that we were going to bring for our team, and you said, well, if we want buy-in, we have to invite weigh-in.
There you go.
And just thinking about, that's the opposite of needing to be right.
That's right.
And here's what's really light bulbing my brain right now is that when I need to be right and I'm trying to make sure I'm right and convince someone I'm right, it's because I want them to agree with me.
There you go.
I actually want their buy-in into what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And it's funny, trying to just be right doesn't work.
Yeah.
But being open to weigh in
Yeah.
can lead to the buy-in that I'm looking for.
Yeah. So I had a friend in college who used to say, it's such a little thing to be right. What I think he meant, and what I grew to understand, was that I can be right, but the cost of my posture and my position of my declaring my rightness can be very off-putting in relationships. So what's the alternative? The alternative is to remember and care, to remember that relational, staying relationally connected, bonded, is far more important in most relationships than asserting our rightness. Being proven right.
How about that?
Because in my relationship with Becky, I can be right about something, but if I'm coming from the wrong place, so what? What has my rightness gotten me?
Yeah.
It's ruptured. And I think you said, Kirk, earlier, it creates a relational wreckage. And I loved that thought and that phrasing. So to avoid a relational wreckage, we want to remain relational because it's far more important than
than me proving my rightness in the moment.
Yeah.
And listen, if you're right, it'll stand the test of time. You don't have to fight for it. You don't have to stomp your foot and insist and pound your fist on the, the conference table and all that stuff that I do when I'm threatened.
Because it's coming from a place of security.
Fear.
Well, fear. And the opposite of that,
Would be secure. Yeah.
the growth area is to become secure.
Right. If this is the right approach, if your approach is the right approach,
It'll rise to the top.
yes, you can trust God that He'll rescue it and go to heaven
Because God's got this.
because God's got us. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So think about this.
Go ahead.
All right. Thanks. So, at its core, leaders decide. We choose. Okay, that's what we do. If you hate to make decisions and you hate to be wrong and you hate to have to correct yourself, don't lead anything, especially in the kingdom. Don't lead anything, because leaders lead and dogs bark, and you can count on both those things happening. A leader cannot not lead any more than a dog cannot not bark. So leadership in its essence is about making choices. And when I realized a choice we made was a lousy choice, I get to make another one. And when I figure out that decision wasn't an optimal decision, we'll make another one. And leaders do that. We just make decisions. And when our decision turns out to be a lousy one, we make another one, and another one, and another one. A follower can't do that. They make a wrong decision and they're stuck, they're sucking their thumb, they're take their toys and go home like this. Well, we don't have the luxury in leadership to do that. And so the need to be right about your decision making is going to keep you from being right.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to put blinders on you so you can't actually see, well, actually, as I think about the decision we made, it was not optimal. And we could actually make a better decision, guys. What do you think? That kind of humility is necessary in Christian leaders, and it's central to the way of being that I think we've been wrestling to describe for the last 18 conversations that we've had.
I'm discovering that in people who carry wisdom and maturity, there seems to be an ease about their need to be right. It seems to have moved off of the table for them, so to speak.
That's good.
Such that perhaps with a younger,
Less experience.
less experienced leader who's trying to attain, trying to impress, trying to achieve something without the characters to support greater influence. The tendency would be to see this need to convince and be right and double down on their rightness. And
I certainly experienced in my own self, in self-reflection, realizing, oh, that was my immaturity, when I can tell I get animated and more than normal.
That's right.
Because, and for me, I deeply believe in the hoped outcome, right, of something.
Yeah.
And think I see a way forward and want other people to see the way forward,
Yeah.
and or my way forward, and I often walk away from conversations feeling disappointed that I showed my immaturity, because it flares up in that way, like you're talking about.
I hear you. I hear you. Yeah. So real simply, am I leading or am I pushing?
That's good.
Because I'm still trying to get to the outcome.
Yeah, that's good.
I'm still trying to get to the goal line.
Right.
But
That's good.
Yeah, leading or driving.
yeah. Am I driven? Am I driving other people, or am I invitational and challenging?
Yeah.
So we hope that this has helped the audience, of course, but also you guys to think about your ways in which you are leading. Think about where you're come from, or what's inside you, what's underneath, motivating or compelling you in any way. So I hope that's a helpful conversation.
Yeah, I gotta ask.
Yeah.
Which I don't think you're saying that there are situations where truth is not important, but there are situations. I think you
Yeah.
can say that there are situations where truth is important. There are things that are true and right.
Yeah.
And you're not saying to just hold hands and sing Kumbaya and disregard the fact that. Just say that there's nothing true, or what can we know? You're talking about how we approach relationship,
Right.
and holding.
Again, Nick, I'm glad you asked the question. When I hear it, think immediately of how people must have experienced Jesus. He doesn't have to be bigger than life to bully people. Because he's right. And the truth didn't have to be forced upon his listeners. Why not? Because his way of being was so connected to the Father. He was so anchored in who he was and how he was approaching people. He almost always, maybe I can't think of an exception, except maybe the temple scene. You know, when I think about Jesus, I love how he's relationally connected to people, even people that the religious establishment couldn't stand. They were interruptions. These were marginalized. These were people who most others had no value for. But I love how Jesus, being who he was, could be true, could speak truth, could carry himself in such a way as to not force people into his directions. That's my run. We're not talking about. Think about it this way: most of the churches that deal with conflict that gets out of control, or factions in the church that divide people, almost always are over people positioning themselves and their rightness. Am I right?
And how they do that.
And then it's how that gets expressed. And we're inviting people to look deep within themselves and ask the question, how is my way of being drawing people forward or repelling people and keeping them, making participation more difficult?
Yeah, that's good.
I've also thought too, and you were asking about that, you think about parenting. Okay, I am right most of the time, but how I'm right with my children, particularly my teenagers,
Is the game.
Hands down. So I hope maybe that kind of
It's not whether you're right, but how you're right.
how you're being right is huge. And they get it. They might expect Dad to blow up and force and prove my dominance, because I can. But if I'll remember on a good day that the relationship is far more important than me being right in this matter or in this circumstance, I think that'll make a big impression on them for the rest of their lives.
So we want to just conclude tonight with a blessing. Given that the assertion that the booby prize in life is about being right about how wrong somebody else is, I just want to bless you with the sensitivity to notice when you're starting to get hooked and when that's starting to play. So I just want to bless you with that, with a fresh sensitivity.
There you go.
And so, so I just want to bless you for the way you've been with us and that you'll continue to be that way, especially with your spouses and your kids. In Jesus' name.
Yeah.
That's it for our time around the fire today. Another conversation on one of the formidable 4 down, and wow, how impactful. For me, when Z talked about someone posturing themselves with a high need to be right, causing everyone else on a team to withhold their participation, it really drove home the devastating impact that needing to be right can have on a leader. I hope y'all noticed the nugget about if you want buy-in, then get way in. That saying has truly become one of my favorite sayings in all of life. I use it all the time. And for me, this comes directly from this conversation. On top of that, it's so impactful to consider the critical value that curiosity plays in leading like Jesus and bringing out the best in those around us. It's amazing how, like Kirk was referencing, when we don't need to be right, people actually want to team with us and collaborate. I don't know about you, but I want that, and I want to lead more like Jesus. Please take a second and hit the like button on this video because that helps us reach more people with this conversation. And if you want more courageous conversations, hit the subscribe button below. If being a part of this conversation has been helpful, feel free to share this video with someone you know who might benefit from it. And until the next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you and make his face shine upon you.